Okay, so before I start this one, I just want to clarify I have a pretty bad cold, but I wanted to try it out, see if people like my cold voice. I'm pretty nasally right now. Um, gonna try and one-shot it. I have backup audio, but yeah, this story is called Terminal. It is a pre-story to the book that I'm currently writing, which takes place immediately after the events from the ending of this story. So it's a little bit of a teaser, I guess, while I work on other things. Um, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Node, Karen Terminal Station. Date 4/27/2138. Time is 8:11. Status operational. Systems are clear. Incoming supply and maintenance vessel. Observatory is still not operational. Labs 2 and 3 are in use. From the window of Lab 2, Iridana watched a makeshift experiment fall apart. The astronomical probe struggled to orient itself in low gravity using what few gravity motors could be spared. Engineers could release it, but it would never see or communicate on the mysterious light in the depth. They were lucky that Triton Station had supplies to bring on such notice. Iridana made her way to the docking bay without being notified by her officer. Things were always on time in space. From narrow corridors and cramped lab spaces back to the spacious hallways and comfortable recreational chambers, out in the farthest reaches of the system was pure silence. Nothing had made noise but humans. At one end of the station was a bulbous observatory. The other contained the docking bay and living quarters. Between the two ends were any facilities needed for daily life. This is Captain Drake of the Trident 12. I'm sending verification now if you'd be so kind as to open the door. It could be heard from any earpiece with level 4 clearance and above. The station officer relayed the information to Iridana, who gave the official verification from her command tablet. She stood at the door and looked cautiously through the docking window, with her arms crossed over her sweater. The door to the ship slowly depressurized and opened, revealing a Vim Captain Drake and a full crew of maintenance personnel in dark blue jumpsuits. Unsurprisingly, Control had let him fly with a bomber jacket over his government-issued flight suit. They could do nothing about his shoulder-length, light brown hair, likely grown from time on interplanetary flights. The door to Charon Station opened with a burst of air. It brought the scent of grease and metal. Finally, someone would be able to repair the observatory. The object out past Nick's orbit had everyone on edge. It's been a while, Drake. Iridana smiled as the young captain rushed to shake her hand. I noticed your itinerary only after we called for support. I never would have thought to find you all the way out here, Dr. Iridana. Actually, I've never been out quite this far myself. I was only on Triton Station because they had no ship pilots there. Well, I'm glad you stayed. Even with the observatory running, I'd like to get the probe out there. If you're willing to help, Lab 2 is at the center of the station. I'll stop by after I take care of the maintenance order. Drake nodded quickly and walked off. Iridana took a moment before pursuing the loading crew. The only real indicator of time on these stations was the people she saw. And Drake had certainly grown into a mature man after the troublemaker he was training under her. But even time couldn't erase that tone in his voice. The joy and charisma he kept with him. 19 years, a generation away from Earth. The maintenance crew did not wait for documentation reports to validate before starting work on the observatory. The telescope lens was fine, but the security wave of it had been triggered rather than impacted. A day's work. But more systems needed updating and routine cleaning. The station officer was assigned to oversee repairs. Once she had reached the lab, things had already begun cleaned up. Drake brought with him half a dozen new magnetomotors and a superior imaging device. The engineers were prepared to deploy in the next 12 hours of testing. The two sat in the dining hall for dinner. It was only big enough to accommodate a staff of 15 on the station and had the luxury of a wide window overlooking the moonscape. It was almost depressing how quickly things were moving. Change was so infrequent that having visitors seemed like a bright holiday season back home. I brought with a present. Believe me, it took all my strength not to eat it on the trip over. Drake unveiled a laughably small pear tart from his bag, vacuum-sealed in a thick plastic wrap. You still like these, right? I thought the present was the test equipment you brought, she laughed. Thank you, Drake. He ignored the abundant medication Erdana took before eating and the lack of other staff with them in the room. So, what's this about a comet or something past Nyx? Is it a leftover probe? Drake asked before filling his mouth with more food than he could chew. The measurement data on the telescope was following a small, shiny object. First we theorized it to be something ice-covered, reflecting the moon's surface, but its properties are way too metallic. Before we could analyze it further, something hit the front of the observatory and blinded us to the security interface. Maybe it's scrap hitting the surface. I mean, there isn't much out this far, but this station has at least one defunct satellite. We would have to be rather unlucky to be hit by the debris of one lone crash, one that is small enough not to be detected by our local measurement grid. Erdana took a tiny piece out of the tart with her fork. What did Officer Chan say? You don't want to know what Officer Chan said. Officer Chan probably said it's a probe, a drone from an incoming incursion, despite the fact that we haven't seen any machines in over 12 years. The both of us knew what we saw. While I disagree, we can't rule it out either. Neither an observation or reporting protocol. After we get our instruments up again, I'll send an alert to Titan. They can decide if it's worth reeling back to Earth. Drake looked out the window, not in a longing way that romanticizes the void of space and the net of stars. He searched for the object with his naked eye. He stood up and took her plate back to the small kitchen. I need to run some checks on the Triton 12. I'll talk to you again. Erdana watched him walk off, his eyebrows knotted in thought. He rarely let on that type of look, preferring to project a happy and ignorant visage. She sighed and went back to her quarters. It was almost evening time on Earth, but here on the station, it was their night. Biological clocks counted for nothing out here at the edge of the solar system, but Erdana knew she needed sleep. She took the next set of her medication in front of a small bathroom mirror, searching for what features might have changed since she last saw Drake. Her pupil did not notice her wrinkling skin or whitening hair. Even with her naturally dark skin, the paleness of space was creeping through. Radiation only feels like poison once it reaches the tail of life. Charon Terminal Station, date 4/27/2138. Time is 19:02. Status: operational, systems are clear. Successful resupply. Observatory defense corrected. Probe deploying in 1 hour. Erdana woke up before her alarm and sat forward. With her recent thoughts on incursion, it might have made sense to dream about the war. Luckily she dreamt of training on Earth, all the test flights, running drills, studying science and math. She sat alone at the dining hall, eating fresh vegetables grown on station after taking her medication. The surface was just as dead as ever. Not even the crew had any business beyond the station walls. By the time she reached the lab, the engineering team was ready to launch with Drake standing by holding a tablet for her to sign. He kept looking back at the Charon team. It was clear he had no idea what went on during the probe launch and would refuse to leave until it was clear. Chan, is the telescope ready? She asked through her mic. Triton team is aligning now. It should be ready to go after that launch. The lab capsule deployed the probe, and it used a small thrust to launch into orbit. Feedback trickled in slowly to let the engineers know it was stable. In less than 10 minutes, it had already opened its measurement devices to check objects as it flew steadily into orbit. Erdana considered Drake's celebratory hugs as a sign of success and made her way to the observatory. Maintenance looked bored, waiting for the telescope to spin ever so slowly in a large circle and then open the observatory doors. Officer Chan stood by, pulling all sorts of routines she wanted to try once it was operational. Her hair was a mess from not sleeping the night before, and it seemed she had simply changed coats rather than changed clothes. Before an hour had passed, both Erdana and Chan received emergency signals. Dr. Erdana, the probe has been destroyed. It passed Nyx and impacted. We didn't see what hit it, a frantic engineering team member said as she traced desperately through probe recordings. Chan shut the doors. Erdana shouted to Chan, who was already proceeding. What are you doing? We just got this function working. If you emergency stop us now, it'll set us back another hour. The maintenance crew member boomed from his perch on the lens balcony. His voice was monotone and far less interested than he made it seem. She could predict what would happen next. Things were always on time and space. Dr. Erdana! Drake burst into the massive room at the other end. We hit something. The doors closed slowly. Everyone gathered at the control desks. We need to report this. I'm not risking the observatory until we can let Titan know what's going on, Erdana told the group. I don't hear anything. We closed the doors for nothing. The same maintenance crew member complained and walked off, holding his temples around his balding head. Drake watched Erdana and Chan prepare an alert for all the other stations. Don't you think we're moving a little too fast? I know it's protocol, but I don't think we're suspecting the same thing when it comes to that collision. Both women were silent for a few minutes. They pretended to work on the alert, but looked at each other for a response. Drake, if you saw what we saw, you'd believe it. Trust me. Officer Chan finally whispered. She never spoke to Drake as Erdana did. She never knew how to talk to him, even when he made it so easy. Once the alert was sent, Drake's flight tablet lit up, a recall to Titan, and a full examination. Bad news from a bad place made Drake's head lean back with a sigh. He ran off to his ship. Curon Terminal Station, 4:27:21:38. Time is 21:44. Status operational. Cautionary alert. Probe collision. All sensors pointing at Station Nix. Transmitting system-wide alert to all stations. Drake moved his belongings from his temporary bed back to the mess behind his cabin. The Triton 12 was powered on, and flight logs ran down the main screen. Erdana stepped with large strides into the ship from the docking bay. What's going on here? I haven't asked you to leave, Drake. Besides, it isn't safe out there, she said with a salesman attitude. I've been ordered back to Titan immediately. Command isn't happy about your alert. They think it's fake. And what do you think? In all my years learning under you, I know where to place my trust. But I just can't disobey orders. If what you're saying is true, they'll need pilots back home. Like me. Yeah, like you. Dr. Erdana, I don't mean any disrespect, but why are you out here? You could be managing Titan Station by now. She remained quiet. She had to think of a good reason that did not involve the situation as it stood. He had told her plan to be a great pilot before she left for the station all that while ago, but she never told him hers. It's a lot of work. You said it yourself. You can't disobey orders. He shook his head. I wanted to be a pilot. Not a ship pilot, but a suit pilot. Like those heroes on Earth. I was never selected, so I settled. The fleet suits aren't like the suits those heroes wear. They're bulky and stiff and poorly tuned. They're just armor, and they're used to hurt people, not save them. Maybe not them, but I know I could help. Then stay here at least. Until we can open the observatory. Tell them your ship is loading cargo. It's probably something we actually need to do. They both laughed, and Erdana walked out of the Triton 12. After some pause, Drake followed. At the observatory, the maintenance crew had abandoned the site, and Chan worked alone. In the dark, her face was lit up by the monitor in her tablet. She used the security ray to check thoroughly for incoming projectiles that could damage the system. Drake stood by on capture, while Chan operated the machinery. Erdana focused herself strictly on observation. The doors opened slowly and the telescope pivoted in response. Alerts started to come through Drake's tablet, but he refused to take his eye off the capture. The massive lens swallowed the light of Nyx. It relayed a similar arena of stars and some fancy-named rocks. Chan, reduce focus. I need to see more of the sky, Erdana commanded. Reduce it? It should be zeroed on the object. Objects. Got it! I think I captured a still image of all the points of interest from the sensors. It should be filtering now. Drake's cheer turned into disbelief, dread that Erdana and Chan were expecting. The image came through. Sitting in front of Nyx was a squad of machines melded into spaceflight vehicles, and behind them, shiny objects cursed the starlight of the cosmos. A magnetic round crashed into the security grid before it could be detected, triggering emergency shutdown. Drake pulled the capture before the observatory shut off. Erdana yelled into her mic. All staff and crew report to the docking bay. We have an emergency on station. Get to the Triton 12. I can outrun them. Drake straightened his jacket and was already by the door. All three of them ran to the end of the station, to the other. Drake checked his tablet as they ran. It looks like the captures are all the same. Every station past Jupiter is reporting these images, and now they're going offline one by one. Drake showed them all the captures in a row as they came in. We're still live, but the alert won't reach Titan in time. Chan checked her own data against Drake's. Erdana slowed down just short of the docking bay. But we have the capture that matters. If they process that image, they can see an armada behind the initial scouting machines. Proof an attack will let them know Earth needs to mobilize. She typed a code into her tablet and pulled a chip the size of a seed from a case in her pocket. A panel on the wall uncovered itself, and then she inserted the chip. What are you, come on. Drake tried to keep his training about him, while watching the panel open a compartment in the wall. It unveiled a U.S. Space Fleet Retaliator-class combat suit. It looked quite old, outdated plating around the limbs and joints revealed exoskeleton motors and power assist. The power pack included on its back was massive compared to the recent models, or actual Pilot League suits. USSF suits were much clunkier than League suits, and did not contain any of the signature helmet designs. Just a hollow suit of armor with crude helmet designs to envelop the user. Erdana used the chip one last time to open the back of the suit and handed it to Drake. This is yours now. You are in direct command and management of Charon Station and its staff. My final order is that you get the cruise of this moon with the Triton 12. I'll be right behind you in this Retaliator V-22. Drake stared at the unfolding suit mechanisms for several seconds before Officer Chan jabbed him in the side with her tablet. He never actually seen a suit. The closest he got was meeting a pilot who gave his qualifier on training. Give the go-ahead on the launch? I'll open my communication to whatever that thing uses, he replied while running into the docking chamber. Charon Terminal Station, 4:27:21:38, 23:10. Status evacuated. Highest emergency. Emergency. Evacuate all personnel. Incursion underway. Awaiting USSF assistance. Hello, I am Atlas. Your suit's integrated software. Checking credentials. We're under attack. I need you to get the crew off Charon Station now. Credentials verified. Welcome, Dr. Erdana. What would you like to do today? I would like for you to allocate power to thrust and turn off weaponry. Dr. Erdana, you are extremely sick. Would you like to contact a medical team? My monitors showed that your organs cannot handle a successful flight today. Override Q FS-20U. Give me manual control right now. Atlas disappeared from her helmet interface and was replaced by a complicated suit diagnostics. She manually disabled weaponry and increased thrust. Drake, this is Erdana. Take off right now. Don't follow the solar route. You need to go straight to Titan. I'm right behind you on the surface. The chamber with the suit ejected her onto the surface of the moon, and she acclimated to the pressure and gravity of her new mechanical shell. Drake removed the pre-approved flight route from the digital control and took a deep breath from the already strained oxygen systems. Officer Chan took up the co-pilot seat, checking alerts from the whole system stations array and Erdana's suit output. The dock gave the ship a magnetic kick, and they were off. Atlas, I need you to locate as many enemy machines as you can on this side of Nyx. It finally started to give some helpful input. A three-dimensional battlefield display with markers for at least a dozen machines. She kicked off the moon's surface and activated thrust to keep up with the Trident 12. The plume of dust beneath both the ship and the suit was the signal. Machines were incoming at a similar speed. Erdana, we're not going to outrun them. Not all the way to Titan. We would need a solid lead, assuming we're going to make it back in less than 2 weeks. Chan was running calculations using military data. Atlas, run a simulation. Tell me how the Trident 12 can make it back to Titan before the invasion. The Neptunian stock runner, ship class Trident Dedication 0012, is equipped with magnetic rotation thrusters and traditional gas propulsion. Triton Station has been wiped out. News of the event will reach Titan Interplanetary Superstation in 5 hours. Assuming they mobilize immediately, the Trident 12 can travel to Uranian Orbital Checkpoint and rendezvous with USSF response fighters in 6 days. For additional chance of survival, see the highlighted combat route. Erdana, you don't have to do this. I'll take our odds without the maneuver, Chan insisted. You never flew against these things. I have. I know the move. Erdana disabled all suit functionality except for thrust and attached one arm to the Trident 12. Once they traveled together at a speed greater than the incoming machine scouts, she jumped off the ship, forcing the Trident away from herself and rocketed toward danger. After a moderate cooling session, the other suit functionalities restarted. Atlas, I want all weaponry online. Bring up my targets on the display and help me aim. Yes, Dr. Erdana. A display of the cold, dark expanse beyond her helmet became a fuzzy map of grays and whites, with red dots painted clearly. A crude shielding unfolded in front of both her arms, and a railgun protruded from her upper right. Drake took his seat, managing chip measurements and peeking over at Officer Chan's tablet. She was limited to a data feed of the suit's readings, but she could tell that her superior had entered combat. Neither could interrupt her no matter what, their desperation to say goodbye. You were both pilots, Drake whispered quietly. He would not look Chan in the eyes. Chan had an excuse not to tell him. Erdana had none. One mag round connected, tearing apart a flight-capable machine. The others took extra precaution to dodge the slow-firing weapon. Atlas, fire at least one round at each of them. I want their attention. Yes, ma'am. The machines were coming in closely. It was hard to see them without the combat display against the vast ocean of space. This is where the suits excelled. What started as a mistake became a great feature during the war. Atlas, magnetize me. Thrust towards the closest machine. She flew towards a blackened body, tall and dense. The machine had weaponry of its own, but struggled to fire as it was pulled towards Erdana. The collision damaged both and slowed them. Using the machine's thrust against it, Erdana flew toward another machine, and then the next. Invasively, the remaining machines thrusted away equal distance and fired upon the stacking metal chassis. Magnetic slugs dug into the enemy machines and eventually into Erdana. She gave the final command to accelerate her suit towards each machine, to continue the directive even after her heart stopped. Erdana knew exactly when she was going to die. Before she came to Charon Terminal Station, before the probe was destroyed, before she put on the suit. And everything is always on time in space.